This video is going to be on identity shift. I'm going to talk about what it is, how to prevent it, and I'm going to give you actionable steps in how you can put this to your advantage and to prevent identity shift that's bad and to encourage good identity shift. This is particularly going to be focused on groups of people, so businesses or more specifically communities, tribes, groups of people living together. So the first thing I need to talk about is what identity shift is. Best way to describe it is with an example. So if we have a person here, we'll call him Adam. And Adam loves to skateboard, right? But he's getting to the age where he needs money and he needs a job. So as the time comes, Adam gets a job working in an office. It's the first one he could get, and he settled with it. Now, this isn't what he really wants. Adam would love to keep skateboarding, but he has to work to make money. So his habits, his actions change, and over time, his perception of himself goes from someone who does not work to someone who does work. And because he spends so much time working, he can't spend as much time skateboarding. And after enough time passes, he now sees himself not as someone who skateboards, but as someone who works an office job. So this is what identity shift is. It's not always a bad thing. In this case, though, it is a bad thing. So why you must be careful of identity shift. First things first is it takes time. It's very, very slow. This isn't something that happens over days or weeks, especially in terms of community. It takes weeks to months. It takes a long time, sometimes even years, right? On the rare case, weeks. So it's very hard to see this identity shift occur, which is one reason you have to be really, really careful of it. Second of all, if you imagine a group of people, any group of people, that collective group sort of has its own mind, it's sort of its own personality or its own character. So it's really important that you're aware that you can treat a group of people as sort of one entity that has a mind of its own. It does its own things. So it is a little bit unpredictable, and it's very hard to keep on track. So what you ideally want, if you imagine this group of people as a person, you could have someone there like a coach nagging it and telling it to do this, do that. And you can do that. You can keep it on track yourself manually. But what you want is a self-correcting person or identity. So you want a community that will keep itself on the right path, even if things try to knock it off of its path. And it's easier than it sounds, but it's not completely straightforward. So, as an example, I want to give another example because I think that's one of the best ways to help with understanding. If you want to know what it looks like for a group of people, we can use a global community as an example. So when plastics were invented, let me see if I can draw a little plastic bag. They were great. They were an easy and cheap and affordable solution to a lot of problems, right? They were great. And then, at a certain point in time, scientists came and said that plastics were really, really bad. And then, because of that, obviously we had the case where people started using less plastics. We either reduced the amount of the plastic we used, or we cut it out entirely. And this was absolutely fantastic, right? And this is what happens with the change. So we have something comes in, and we had a change in habits, a change in identity. We now no longer, even if we really liked plastics, we now no longer see ourselves as someone who used plastics. We're people who use that recyclable paper cup even if you don't like it and you would prefer the plastic, you are still someone who uses that cup, and you identify as someone who uses paper cups over plastic cups, either because you like supporting the environment or because of government regulations and you don't have a choice. And I hope that makes a lot of sense. So when we're looking at identity shift, there are 4 I's that affect it. And I's, it's like, the first one is ideas. Oh, it's so hard to draw. I've got a mouse currently. And it is not easy. Ideas. So ideas are sort of like the values that people hold. This is like the shared stories and values and ideas of a community, where people believe, what people believe in, how people should act. It's like a moral code. It's the stories we tell. It encompasses all that. So ideas is like the fundamental, and it's the base. It's sort of the biggest of the 4 I's, if that makes sense. Like, ideas falls into this, and then the other I's are smaller and smaller and fit inside. And I'll explain, that all should make sense as I explain more. Second of all, we have institutions. I am not going to draw that out because that takes a long time to write with this mouse pad. So I'll just draw like a corporate building. Right, we have institutions. Oh. This mouse is very bad. But you get the idea. Here's our beautiful building. Institutions are governments, companies, communities, groups of people that will have a leader. So not friendship groups, that's a little bit small for this. And the institutions are the decision makers. They influence the things we buy. They show us like the ads on our televisions, and they have a big impact on what we see, how we perceive the world and our culture. Whether you like to believe it or not, you are heavily influenced by these people, unless you live out in the woods somewhere on your own, which, if you're watching this video, it's very unlikely that you're free from their influence, seeing that this is on YouTube. Thirdly, we have interactions. So this is how each person interacts with other people, interacts with products. What's a product? Like an iPad or something? A phone. Is how you interact with stories and the news. Look at that. Beautiful. And this is where you are, as a person, are influenced by the world around you. Right? You can imagine it as anything, any interaction you have with anything really falls under interaction. So everything you do, you are influenced by, and that is how we define interaction. And lastly, we have identity. So this is this is sort of like your brain. That's a terrible brain. It looks like I don't know what that looks like, but this is a brain, okay? Look. Brain. So these are your individual beliefs, your opinions, your passions, your hobbies. This is only what you believe and what you like and think about. And that is influenced by your interactions with people, by the institutions, the corporations, your government, the companies, and by the shared ideas of the communities you're in. I'll go back over these so you don't need to stress out too much, because it's going to come up again a couple times, and I want to be really, really careful that you understand that this is ideas, institutions, interactions, and individual. And I'll go back through it again, so don't worry if you can't remember it, because I can barely remember it myself. So looking back at the previous example with the plastic waste, the idea, we have a plastic bag, or we have single-use plastics, right? And this is not the idea actually, this is just the thing that happened. We invented single-use plastics, and the idea came along when the scientists said that plastic is really bad. Right? They did some tests and go, this stuff doesn't break down. It's getting in our blood. It's getting and contaminating everything it touches. So this was the idea, the shared belief, because we generally, as a society, have a lot of trust in governments and scientists. So we trusted that this would be, that they're safe, that they're trustworthy, and that plastics are bad. Then we have institutions. I'm just going to build a house this time. I can't be bothered drawing a skyscraper. So we have institutions, and the institutions are the governments that started banning single-use plastics. See, single-use plastics were banned. And then also you have corporations, say like Coca-Cola, and they started recycling their bottles. And you also have other companies like National Geographic that start making... This mouse is terrible, man. The National Geographic that start making documentaries about how bad plastic is, that it's destroying the environment. And from there, you have your interactions. You start watching the documentaries, right? You start watching the documentaries. Because of the government's incentives, you start using less plastic waste, say like disposable cups. You don't really have a choice, so you start using less plastic cups. And whether you like it or not, you eventually will be forced to change it, or you embrace it right away. Then finally, at the individual level, this is a brain. You've got a smooth brain now, right? It can have a couple wrinkles. It's looking less and less like a brain each time I draw it. Eventually, your ideas change. Whether you're forced into it or whether you embrace it, your identity becomes someone who doesn't use as much plastic, who is more responsible. Because either you choose to use less plastics because of that documentary you watched, or the government enforces new regulations, say banning plastic straws or banning single-use plastics. Alright guys, we did have to cut the video there because we had some technical difficulties, but I would like to continue on how to prevent identity shift. And so we're going to follow the framework we had before with the 4 I's, starting with ideas. This is my light bulb here, have little curls in it. And the first step when preventing identity shift is you want your community to have good core values. The importance of this is that they're carefully defined, and then decision makers and the community can know about them. You can promote them, and this is sort of like setting up the basics. It's like the fundamentals of preventing identity shift over time. You want to make sure that these values are understood, and as time goes on, they're kept and maintained. And second of all, we have institutions. So this, in your case, is the community, or like the sort of the leading bodies of the community. And the importance here is that the communal body, the group of people that are leading this tribe, are there to help instill the ideas. So, for example, if my core idea here is I want people to be more friendly, I want to make sure people stay friendly, and I want to make sure that people care for each other and look out for each other, and get to know each other, right? Basically keeping each other well looked after and sticking beside each other. What? That was a lot of this, each other's. But anyway, what we'd do is you could say, encourage people to come to a weekly lunch that's catered every, I don't know, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or something like that. And it allows people to catch up. So, you have a long row of tables, and everyone can sit down and enjoy, sit around this table and catch up with each other and talk and communicate and get to know each other a lot better. And that's a really good way that you can encourage people to be more friendly and to catch up instead of just using this community, this physical tribe as housing. Next is you have the interactions. Right? And this is where all the stuff happens. This is where your ideas that are implemented by your institution have real impacts. There's another eye for you. And the important thing about this is you have to understand that at this level, you do not have control, right? This is where it starts to go into the hands of the people. Now, that being said, you can do things to encourage certain interactions to happen more than others. For example, going back to this table example over here, where everyone comes for a weekly or twice weekly communal dinner where everyone gets to catch up. So where I'm living at the moment, we put every table, we have 4 rows, and there's a lot of tables end to end, and that leaves a lot more space for people at one table to sit next to a person at another table. And there's no assigned seating, so you can sit wherever you want. And in our example here of trying to encourage people to be more friendly, what we're doing is we are encouraging people to talk to people they might not traditionally talk to or might not regularly catch up with. And then finally, we have the individual, right? One person. And I think earlier in the video, I explained that a community has a mind of its own, in a sense. And what really determines how people view that mind of its own, like what that community looks like, is the shared thoughts of every single individual. Right? Every single person makes up the whole, and you can tell sort of what that personality of that community is by walking into it. When a stranger walks in, and their first impressions is generally what that place is like. It's a very good way. If you can see everyone acts this way or everyone talks this way, this is where like the magic happens. And so I hope that sort of explains it. You come up with a core idea and define it very clearly. Make sure that it's taught to all the people who are making decisions and all the people who are in the community. And then from there, the people who make the decisions should encourage activities, events, say clubs, workshops, anything you can think of really that helps to support idea. Posters, at these theoretical dinners, you could have someone coming up and giving a speech and talking about and promoting these values and encouraging them and supporting people who support these values. And then the individual is where you can sort of encourage interactions to happen a certain way. In the interaction level. But this is where it leads to people's individual beliefs and ideas changing and therefore shaping the community as a whole. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit tricky to understand, I think, for some people, but I hope I've done a clear enough job explaining that. And you've stuck around this long, so I would like to go to a bonus tip, which this one is very important, especially once you have established a community with values you're happy with. So let's say in this box here, it's a bit of a rough box. In this box here, you have your community. Right? When introducing new people into the community, we'll represent them with blue. You only want to introduce a small fraction of this total population here at any one time. And the importance of that is when you have one person, that one person that has been added quickly adopts to the values of everyone else. So if you have a community that you're really proud of, that you're really happy with, you know, an environment, even if it's workspace, it doesn't have to be a community where people live together. If you have a workplace environment that you're really proud of, that people get along well and everything's nice, you only want to introduce one person at a time, because they will quickly pick up the values of everyone else. But if we do this the other way around, say you've got a few people here, and then you decide, well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people there, and you decide to take on 3 new employees or 3 new residents, 3 new members. They will, while they won't have a massive influence on the people already living there, what will happen is they will, sorry, my battery's just going a little bit flat there. All right, back to it. So what's going to happen is these people will have a reasonable impact on the new people, as they're in a new community and there are more people already in this community. There is pressure to conform to some extent, which is not necessarily bad, especially if you've got a good community going. But because there's a good group of these people, they will also impact a few of your people already there. And this could be for better, but it could be for worse. And the goal is to eliminate this variable as best we can, so that in the end, you have a group of people that you are happy with and that you can keep on the right track. This pretty much concludes what I have to talk about for now. I might revisit this in the future because there's still things I can talk about, like what happens when you are starting up your community and how you instill those values initially, which is a lot more active work than passive work. But I haven't dived into that enough to teach you about that confidently. And also, if you like this, if you think like living with your mates would be the coolest thing ever, living with family, please follow this channel, because I want to teach you everything that you need to know to learn this. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to go a deep dive and be your personal researcher. I'm going to tie these things together better than any robot can do at the moment. AI can do individual tasks reasonably well, but bringing big tasks together like this is not something that it can do very well, especially not yet. That's still a significant number of years in the future. So please follow, because this is something that I'm so passionate about. And I hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you later.